Welcome everyone to Talk Recovery Radio. We're coming to you live, noon to 1 every Thursday. Two ways you can hear us on Vancouver Co-op Radio, 100.5 FM. And now with our new COVID restrictions since March, we're coming to you live on Facebook as well because we can't go to the studio. And I'm online right now with co-host, Mr. Darren Gaylor. Hey, Darren, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going well.
Doing well. Welcome. Good to see you, sir.
To you.
Yes.
And to our listeners on Co-op Radio, we are a week behind our live show on
Yes.
Facebook.
Thank you. And special shout out to Jordan and Kimmett to organize the show, get our guests and get us to rebroadcast on the radio, 100.5 FM. I miss going to the downtown. Well, I kind of miss it and I kind of don't. Going downtown, there's, the studio is right in the middle of the downtown east side. I don't want to use the word ghetto, but it's an interesting neighborhood. And it's sometimes we would see old friends suffering, and sometimes we would be able to have a quick chat just to give them a quick reminder, hey, like there was a time when you weren't using, so maybe you can do that again. Big news yesterday. Vancouver City Council, not the city of Vancouver, but City Council voted in favor to decriminalize drugs. And be the first city to do it. And the mayor wants to get all the cities in British Columbia to agree with them. And then the next step is, because the city can't decriminalize drugs, it's a federal law. So if enough cities all gather and there's enough momentum that the federal ministers and federal MPs will all get on board, and then Canada will decriminalize possession of small amounts of drugs. Great idea. Stop the overdose crisis. We've all heard the Twitter hashtags and we've all heard the conversations. Just, another disclaimer, we do it every week. I totally believe in decriminalization. I think we need to make it, using drugs decriminalized, but the social disorder that's caused by using drugs definitely is a legal issue. But there's a lot of fear because the idea that politicians and all these people in favor of decriminalization, they always talk about the Portugal model. We've talked about this on the show, and they talk about the evidence from the Portugal model and how Portugal decrimmed 20 years ago and their rates of reduction in drug use and reduction in overdoses, because they had an overdose crisis way before we did. And it's not true. Like, it's simply not true. Portugal did the dissuasion model, and there's articles that I've been looking through, and Vancouver has now gone on record, according to news articles, they do not want to implement the other side of the Portugal model, which is the administrative part. So basically, if you use drugs in Portugal, you get like a speeding ticket. You don't go to jail, but you get a ticket where there needs to be something that happens, and you go see this clinic, and they help you start a treatment process, and they start that at a very young age. Like, that's why Portugal got out of their overdose crisis and have the successes. Decrim, and this is coming from the mouths of the people that created the Portugal model, decrim did not stop Portugal's overdose crisis. And I don't know why Vancouver wants to do this kind of like, yeah, you smoke crack in front of anyone's doorway. You can't call the police anymore. And I think Mayor Kennedy is really making a big mistake. And I don't think people get it. They've been tricked. They talk about Portugal in the right time, in the right space, and then they don't talk about what Portugal really did. And so people really think you can just do whatever in Portugal, and because of that, there's no stigma. Not true, not true, not true. Lots of stigma in Portugal when it comes to drug use. Because drug use, for some people has negative consequences. And I'm really sad that some of those people that do get the negative consequences from using drugs are going to fall even through some darker days. and people that can do heroin and still go to work and still have 3 kids and all that. I don't know who they are, but the ones that are out there that can do that, like decrim will be great for them. But for people like you, people like me, Darren, like the mayor's form of decrim, I don't know, probably is going to kill more people.
It's like you said, it's just a sad situation. Um, it's such a pointless move, and in a
It's pretty
time
pointless, actually. You're right.
like at a time where, I mean, yeah, there's so many people dying, and it's an overdose crisis. But I mean, there's been addiction forever, and there hasn't been a worthwhile move um, to help sick people, by the government, anyways. And it's just a sad state of affairs, because I'm afraid that this thing is just going to be one of those political flashes that, oh, yeah, they're doing something, and we've needed this for so long, and and so now there's not going to be anything more, for a few years, right? Because we're all just sort of distracted by the
They
decred.
say that healthcare is important, but there's no connection. Like they don't get the administrative part in Portugal is what connects people to healthcare. Like it says here, I've been reading. It says here, Portugal's efforts are commendable. There are aspects, however, that should not be replicated in Vancouver. Commendable. Oh, okay. Like stopping overdoses is commendable, but hey, we don't want to actually do what you guys did. We've heard very clearly from people who use drugs in Portugal that any type of interaction or interference as a result of possessing drugs preserves a lot of the same harms as criminalization. But who did they talk to? Because I went to Portugal with a camera and I talked to a lot of people, and there's a lot of pretty happy people that they ended up going to the Commission of Drug Dissuasion. So the city opposes any new administrative regime in Vancouver, and instead wants to urge full decrim, which will completely eliminate all penalties in regards to drug use. How are people going to get health care? Like it's really sad. So I don't know if you're listening and like you're liking all these likes from the city of Vancouver and Vice and Vancouver Sun and all these articles about decrim in Vancouver, and yeah, that's what we need to do. We need to end stigma. Stop liking those likes. Like look, get the facts. Like I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you. Dissuasion stopped Portugal's overdose crisis and lowered their addiction rates, and not decrim. And I just don't know why we just fall for this crap from a bunch of people that just want to make drugs legal in Canada. And you know what? Make them legal. But like, you know what? There's a 2 month wait list to get a funded bed in British Columbia. There isn't a 2 month wait list to get a funded bed in Portugal. So yeah, people are going to die, and you're hearing it here on Talk Recovery. It's the truth. If you don't like it, if you don't believe us, I don't really care. I mean, it's my experience. It's what I experience, and I'm going to keep saying it. I sent a letter to the mayor yesterday. We'll go on to our guest now. I got a reply from City Council. They want to meet. I sent them everything that I had learned in Portugal, a trailer to the movie I'm working on, Crisis, and just like a plea saying, you know what, like you're making a huge mistake. Like you can't just use half the evidence. You have to use all the evidence. And I know somebody read it and did get a request to meet with some members of City Council. So I got a meeting on Monday, and I don't want to come across as the crazy person that's against. I just want to come across as somebody that's saying, hey, like I want my friends who may be stuck down there to have access to recovery. And the way they're doing decriminalization is going to make it even harder for them to access recovery. And so wish me luck on Monday.
Good luck, Giuseppe.
Yeah. Anyway, you can listen to us here, and don't forget SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube. Replay all of our shows at talkrecoveryradio.com. Darren and I have been doing this for 7 years, hundreds of guests, thousands of listeners, pretty excited. And we push the narrative to the cliff, and I haven't jumped off yet. So let's keep going, Darren. Who are we talking recovery with today?
We get to talk recovery with Cam Adair from Game Quitters. We're going to be talking gaming addiction, uh, and then obviously how to get help, how to quit, how to stop. Maybe a little bit of information around just how big a problem this is. Welcome to the show, Cam. Thanks for being here, bud.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. There's a storm happening here in Thailand, so let's hope all is good.
I was just going through a bit of the website for game quitters. It looks like you're quite the world traveler now, but I read a little bit. It wasn't always like that. You yourself are admittedly were addicted to gaming. Um, I'm sure that took a lot of convincing from other people first, because I mean, it's like gambling, alcohol, and now we're getting into, the decriminalization of substances. Like, we can legalize everything. It's not going to take away the fact that addiction is a very serious and very consequential situation. So let's talk about your story a little bit. Like, how did you get to this spot with game quitters? Obviously a personal story from yourself.
Exactly. And, initially gaming was just a fun hobby I had. It was, I'm a typical Canadian kid. I went to school, I played hockey, and I would go home and play video games. And, today I'm 32. And so I'm very much see myself as the first generation of boys who grew up with high-speed internet and online gaming. Right. And what happened was when I was 13 years old, I began to experience a lot of bullying at school and also at hockey, actually. And that bullying really kind of hurt my self-esteem. It hurt my self-confidence. It made me feel like I wasn't safe in these environments that I was required to go to every single day.
Right.
And that caused me to want to escape. I wanted to get away, and gaming provided that escape. Not just because I could play for many hours, but I also was able to feel a sense of accomplishment, competition. I was able to kind of go into a virtual world and be something else. And people didn't really know me, or, even I just had more control because people couldn't really bully me online in the same way. Right. Because I could block them or mute them or go to a different server. Whereas at school, I couldn't control if kids were chasing me around at lunch hour trying to put me in a garbage can. Like, I didn't feel safe. And online, I did feel safe. And so the more I gamed,
you could essentially respond however you wanted to, sitting in front of your computer, all the things that you wouldn't say if the bully was right in front of you.
Right. I mean, it's that, and it's also like I didn't even have to deal with it in the same way, because like I could just turn the game off and they were no longer there. Whereas at school, that was not the case. They followed me everywhere, and that had a big impact on me. And so the more I played games, the less I wanted to go to school, and the more I was bullied, the more I withdrew from these different areas. I stopped playing hockey, I stopped going to class, and gaming replaced all of that time. And I started gaming, up to 16 hours a day, all day, every day. I dropped out of high school. And of course, my parents were reasonable and said, if you're not going to school, then you have to get a job. And I thought that was like a fair request, but getting a job didn't seem as much fun as playing video games. So I actually pretended to have jobs and deceive my family. One of the jobs, I worked at Walmart, like the graveyard shift, and I would sneak home and just play video games instead of going to the job. And another job, I pretended to actually work at an internet cafe, because I thought, what better job to pretend to have than one where I could literally have my parents drop me off at this center where I could just play video games all night, right? And the whole strategy was just to like wear my parents down, to confuse them, to get them to just not want to deal with the situation, and to eventually just kind of leave me to do what I wanted to do. Unfortunately, gaming let me escape, but it didn't really fix my problems. And eventually I got to a point where I wrote a suicide note, and it was kind of that night when I realized I need to make a change.
So, I mean, you didn't, as you mentioned gaming, like you could have just changed that to, you know, anything, substances, and it would have sounded the exact same. It would, you know what I mean? Like the same story. And we all know, well, I mean, there's evidence now, like, you know, gaming, um, it gets into that same neural pathways as substances. It sort of changes us, right? Um, what is it though? Like, is it, you mentioned, you know, high speed internet? Is it now? I mean, I'm from the, you know, ColecoVision, Atari, the real simple games when it first came out. Is there is there the potential to be addicted to that, or is it the way they've designed it nowadays with the, you know, the completely realistic, you know, environments that they're gaming in now? Like, is it just a screen interaction that's the addiction, or, you know, what's the changes like?
I think you'd find many people who could argue that, you know, they were addicted to arcade games and Pac-Man and Atari, and they really struggled with Quake and all the sorts of games that, you know, were more classic games back in the day. The games today have changed fundamentally, though. And even for myself, you know, growing up, obviously I played games online, which meant games are more competitive. And we know from research that games that are more competitive and kind of open worlds where they don't really have an end can be a higher risk for people than like single player offline games. So even for me, as I started to grow up with the internet, games were a riskier uh, activity. But the games today are quite advanced and much more sophisticated. For instance, games today are under a business model called games as a service, where it's a free to play business model. You get the game for free typically, and then you have opportunities to spend money within the game. And the opportunities to spend money come in different ways. You can spend money to progress in the game, get extra levels or extra quests and missions to pursue. You can spend money to customize your character because the industry knows people don't just like to progress in levels and weapons, but they like to see the visual progression of their characters as well. You can also pay to win, and you can pay for additional content. And so, if you take a game like Fortnite, for instance, or World of Warcraft is another example, just the other day, the new expansion for World of Warcraft was released called Shadowlands. And I played World of Warcraft when I was like 17 years old. And now, 15 years later, it's still going on. It still has a new expansion that came out last year. World of Warcraft Classic was released, and so I could have continued to play World of Warcraft for the last 15 years and constantly have additional content. So there's no way for me to beat the game, and there's just more content to consume. So the games are much more sophisticated, and they can respond dynamically based on your player behavior, your player data, and all player data. And that's posed additional risks for people who play them.
See, this, it's such a difficult, I mean, this is an industry that, I mean, it's amazing. Like the technology, you know, like from where it's come over the last, you know, 10, 20 years. I mean, like we want to see this, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like this industry that's like, it amazes me. It's not like, you know, a pharmaceutical company that's making the best, most addictive drug, but it kind of is. I mean, these guys are developing games like to hook you. They know the psychology. It's like anything. It's like the casino that's built for your psychology to be grabbed and brought in and sucked in subconsciously right away. Um, like, it, I mean, is there a way? Like, we can't fight the giant, you know. So let's talk a little bit like preventative stuff. Um, you know, like, do you just say no to kids growing up that are going to be introduced to these amazing games right off the bat? Um, you know, like, what is your information? What does your data tell you about the beginning? Like talk to a parent who's got a young kid that doesn't know what's right or wrong, what's the appropriate age, or what to start them on. Like how do you
Yeah.
look at the beginning?
Well, I think there are certain prevention anchors that you want to be looking at. The first one is keep gaming from being the only thing they do. Gaming becomes a problem when gaming is your life instead of it's a part of your life. And there are multiple different lifestyle habits that you can prioritize where if you're prioritizing them, things like good sleep, good diet, exercise, ideally face-to-face interactions, time outside, although in Canada it's a little bit hard, but Vancouver sometimes isn't so bad. And like good relationships, a balance of other hobbies and activities. If you're doing these different areas every day or multiple times a week, and then you're playing games as well, there just isn't that much time for games to consume all of your attention and all of your engagement. Whereas if gaming is the priority of the day, it's the only activity you have. It's the only social outlet you have. It's the only source of your confidence or self esteem. Well, then gaming is very easily justified as 16 hours a day, all day, every day, because it's your life. And
So,
that's
so
where,
Cam,
regardless,
would you consider, Cam, you're in recovery from video game addiction?
somewhat. I think that for me, everyone in the community is going to have a different relationship with kind of the word recovery or sobriety or addiction. For me, I definitely see myself as like I have recovered from it, and I have to be very mindful of what is vulnerable for me when I engage in whether it's technology or games or so forth.
So do you still play video games in a controlled environment, or have you
Yeah.
stopped in a
So
controlled?
there's multiple layers to that question. So the first one I'll share is that I didn't play games at all for about 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
And for me, it was like no gaming, I don't care, no interest, don't want to go back to it. Last year, I decided as a controlled experiment to go back and play a game I used to love, which was Counter Strike. I played it for 6 months. I had certain rules, like I only played it 2 hours a day, no more than that. I had a few like mentors who were there as a support system, making sure that it didn't become a problem, and my own personal accountability of if it was becoming a problem, I was going to nip that in the butt immediately and not let it spiral in any way. Now, during those 6 months, I was, more or less able to maintain that sort of 2 hour limit. I think initially there were a few days where it was like I was so excited I played a little bit more, but it was pretty difficult for me to go over that limit, specifically because I had said it and I was very determined to maintain it. On some level, that became frustrating because the game CS or CSGO or Counter Strike, playing 2 hours was like me playing two matches. And it wasn't really enough to kind of ever for me to feel like I got enough that day. So it was actually a little bit frustrating, but also my work was my priority, exercise was a priority, and gaming just had to stay in its place.
So that's
Now,
the question I want to ask, though. You say nip in the butt.
yeah.
You didn't play games for, I'm sorry, it was 8 years. You said 8 years.
Mhm.
So, moms are watching, dads are watching, people are watching that are playing video games. How would you nip it in the butt? Because
Yeah.
this show's put on by Last Door. We work with people with video game addictions as well. And it's unbelievably difficult to get somebody with an addiction to video game to even think treatment or some kind of intervention is needed, because it's not, no one's dying from it, right? So what do you mean by nip it in the butt? And are we talking CBD? Are we talking, like, what are some of the steps one can take or that you took to help someone stop or
Yeah. So I think initially it depends on where the motivation is coming from. So if you have a gamer coming to me saying I want to stop, well, then it's a pretty simple process. You have to commit to stopping. You have to identify the void that's going to be created, both in the activities you're doing, the social aspect, and the needs that gaming is fulfilling. You're going to need to work on scheduling your time better. You're going to need to develop new friendships of people who have other things in common with you, and navigate the emotional experience of cravings and urges to play, and sense of loss, and these sorts of things. A support group obviously is very helpful, and CBT exercises, and beyond. Now, if you're a parent and you're working with someone who doesn't want to stop, well, it's significantly more challenging. And denial or justification around gaming is extremely strong, and defensiveness also. Now, gamers are defensive for a couple specific reasons. First, gaming has been under attack as an activity for many years, if not decades. Unfortunately, in the US, with school shootings, the narrative became that games make you violent, and if you play video games, you're going to become the next school shooter. It's not really been fair, and it's caused gamers to very much feel like society doesn't respect them, doesn't understand them, and doesn't appreciate or respect the activity that they very much are passionate about. Now, that kind of residue has now expanded into gaming is an addiction. Now, ironically, every gamer knows someone who struggles. Like, it's not like this is some giant secret in the gaming community. Everyone knows someone who plays too much, but they're very defensive about the activity. So I think for parents, first, they need to be educated on what gaming motivations are. Players play for very specific reasons: to feel a sense of achievement, to feel a sense of escape, to feel a sense of social connection, and to feel a sense of purpose. And so just removing games is also going to mean that they're now going to struggle to fulfill important emotional needs like social connection. So it's not always as realistic to just remove games, but reducing it to a more manageable level, is kind of generally a first step. I think you really want to get underneath, like, why are they gaming? Is there bullying at school happening? Are they doing virtual school now? And virtual school on a computer is just really hard compared to, well, I can just play video games right now on my computer instead. What about the anxiety of COVID? What about the fact that all their friends are playing, and if they don't play video games, they're going to be a social outcast? I think you really have to, like, not attack games, but begin to identify what is the underlying motivations, the reasons behind the reasons,
Yeah.
and really start to see if you can make progress in some of those first. So if they are staying up all night gaming, well, all their friends maybe are overseas. And if they're not gaming, they're struggling socially. And so maybe that's an area where you can start first.
Yeah, it's definitely an industry that it's not so black and white. It's not like a heroin where it's like, if you're not going to work, if you've cut off from all your family, if you're living on the street, like, you need to quit and really consider never using it again. Whereas gaming and such, your own story, it is that, like, is that a purpose of game quitters? Is there ever a point where it's just like, no, the way you play, you can identify this person cannot pick up a controller ever again? Or, like you said, is your purpose more about, like, getting somebody that maybe got sucked in at a vulnerable place in their life and seeking the help that are required to get some self-control, self-regulation, maturity, priorities of life values, and get them abstinence for some time until they've acquired a regular pattern of living, weighing consequences and not. Is that more so the goal?
Things have evolved, to be just frank. Initially, my work, I was working with gamers who were emailing me saying, Cam, I can't stop playing and I want to. And so for them, it was kind of straightforward. It was, we recommended to take 90 days off gaming and then to reevaluate, because ultimately, depending on your values, depending on your goals, depending on your vulnerabilities, you can make that decision for yourself. However, making that decision with much better information is important. For instance, if you have never lived your life without playing video games, which happens often now because kids start at 2 or 3, 4, 5 years old, they've never had the chance to develop other hobbies. So when you're saying stop gaming, what you're saying is stop having a life, stop having friends, and stop having any purpose in your day. So actually giving them the opportunity to experience life without gaming and realize actually it can be really awesome. And personally, even after that experiment of playing for 6 months, I chose to stop, not because it was a huge problem in my life, but because it was like, it was whatever. Like, I prefer to do other things. I'd rather work on music. I'd rather work on my business. I'd rather spend time with my girlfriend than have people screaming racist things at me in some video game that's like a little bit toxic. You know, I'm a bit too old for that now, just being honest. And that was me. However, I know people in our community who they just can't play. Like, it's just it takes too much effort for them to maintain moderation. It's just not a good activity for them, and it's better for them to not play at all. Whereas some others, they're able to maintain moderation, and so that's fine. Like, it's about trying to help people determine what they want out of their life and what's going to help them ultimately be happy and healthy.
Right. And you mentioned, uh, you know, the need that it's fulfilling, the community that they're engaged in, the reward system that's happening, the commitment to what, to the game itself. Like there's a lot of that, you know, it's valued in life and necessary, but just in a faulty way, in an artificial way. So when on your website with game quitters, there's an idea of 90 days off gaming, and what sort of support is there for somebody that's, because I mean, if it's a lot like quitting drugs, like you're gonna sort of, fall into loneliness, isolation, constantly, wanting to play and all that comes off with going cold turkey. What are some of the supports from your website in those 90 days?
Yeah, so gamequitters.com is a peer support community. So there are tons of people out there who are, during the 90 days or they're well beyond that, and they're supporting each other. There's a forum for people to journal. There's over 45,000 journal entries on there of people sharing their experiences. We have programs also to help just provide like guided experiences, but they're not necessary. I have over 200 videos on YouTube that basically answer any question on this subject you can imagine. Like, is it normal to have dreams and nightmares after I quit gaming? Like you wake up, you're like, I played games last night, and it's actually like, that's a common experience with any addiction. Right. Like you just, you think you relapse, and so, what do you do about cravings? What do you do about your friends? Like all these sorts of questions. There are videos, there's content available, and also now a lot of content for parents and families and also professionals. So if someone is out there and they are looking to kind of like just reimagine their relationship with games, we recommend take 90 days, use it as an experiment, use it as a challenge, and see what your relationship is like to gaming. If it's really hard, well, that's probably a good sign that you need to actually develop some other coping strategies in your life. You need to develop some other structures that will help you be able to not struggle so much when you're not playing video games, right? Like, do you really want to not be in control in that way? Whereas at the end of 90 days, you have some new activities, you've made some new friends, you've learned some stuff about yourself. You can make a determination if you want to go back in moderation or just continue life without it. And that's a good structure for us. It's worked for a lot of people all over the world. And that's kind of what we suggest.
And do you think a family should intervene with when it comes to youngsters? Because you take your own responsibility and you take your own inventory. And yeah, I want to game every day for 16 hours, but you're living in
Yeah.
your basement. You're 25, and you're not working. And there's I'm even sad that I'm even laughing about it because there's some serious issues, like get out of the house, go get a job. There's a lot of pain and a lot of lives going on right now because of video game addiction. And then with this idea of like, well, it's not drugs, it could be worse. But like, should as family members, like, would it have been in your best interest for your family to really intervene when you were younger? What do you say to moms and dads that got, a 17-year-old that's just not stopping, and he doesn't want to stop, and he doesn't want to play hockey, and he doesn't want to date girls, and he just wants to, get to the next level. And I'll add to that, for some of them, it's a job to them. They're making, it's their career choice in life. So what do we do as parents?
Absolutely. I mean, I have every horror story email in my inbox, right? Like I'm the one who's going to receive I tried to remove devices and my kid threatened to commit suicide, right? Or like my kid is now on the street because he refused to stop gaming. We removed it and he's now like literally on the street. Um, my kid attacked me when we removed gaming. Like we could go down the list. I have these stories. I have hundreds of them. And I have a lot of compassion for parents. It's really, really hard. It's complex. It's not easy. It's not as simple as just removing games. It's also not as simple as just allowing them to continue to play games. Uh, a big thing I recommend is get a professional involved. And that doesn't have to necessarily be initially on the gamer needs help, but maybe the family needs some support. Maybe the family needs to really actually develop a plan. They need to develop how they're going to communicate about it. They need to really actually get themselves in a place where they're able to actually navigate this. So, I'm very bullish on having professionals involved because some of these cases, especially if the kid is older and bigger, this can be a very serious situation. Now, I do think that with that said, parents need to take this seriously. We can't just continue to hope that it's just a phase. It's probably not a phase. And gaming, although it's not drugs, it's not heroin, it can be a form of self harm if it's having a significant negative impact to their health, their mental health, their well being, their cleanliness, their hygiene. Like, this is a serious thing. So I do think that for parents, they need to take it seriously. But just attacking games or just removing it isn't always the answer.
I got one more
And they
question
need
here.
to have a plan.
So on your website, Game Quitters, you have a list of people that can help. So go to gamequitters.com, and take a look at get help, the get help button. Do you think, I want to have a question about the industry now? Do you think the industry that's making billions, if not more, on teenagers getting hooked and so forth, do you think they're doing enough? Are you part of anything? Do you know of anything? I mean, it's going to be hard because it's a global thing, but in the United States and Canada, like, do you think like alcohol and tobacco, and do you think there needs to be more regulations, or do you think just 18 plus sticker is good enough? Do you think they should be funding prevention campaigns?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about it. The first thing I'll say is that Canada is embarrassingly behind on this subject. And it pains my heart being Canadian to say that. When it comes to something like loot boxes, which, there's a lot of conversations around the world by different regulators, by different governments, investigating the link between items within games that have a proven link in independent replicated studies with problem gambling that are available to kids. There's no investigation in Canada about the subject. There's almost no media articles in the entire country over the last 5 years on the subject. I'm blown away at how little is being done in Canada around this subject, and not just loot boxes, but just video game addiction itself. And so, yeah, thanks for having me, so I can help spread this message, and thanks for the work that you guys do. but Canada needs to do so much more. Now, the industry itself is, up until last year, was took a stance that they argued video game addiction is not real. It's not a real thing. Gaming is fun. Gaming is entertainment. And people who struggle with games, well, it's a mental health problem that they have that's not related to games. And it's just not true. Like, the number of people who I have worked with personally who their lives just magically became significantly better when they removed games from their life is a very large amount of people. There's hundreds of research papers that are high quality that have investigated this and found that gaming addiction is a real thing. It doesn't impact all gamers, just about 3%, but there's 2.5 billion active gamers worldwide. So even 1% is a large amount of people. The industry, I think, needs to do so much more. They should be funding prevention campaigns. They should be funding independent research and providing their data sets to be investigated so we can identify what can actually be done to help prevent these problems, which can then allow people who don't have problems or the aspects of games that don't create problems to be enjoyed by millions and billions of people. And that's really in the best interest of everyone. So I would love to see the industry prioritize gamer mental health significantly more. Games are the first line of defense. That's where young people are spending their time. And they're making billions of dollars, like you said. So they certainly have a social responsibility. And I think there's a lot more they can do. If you read sort of the big tobacco playbook against nicotine being an addiction, it's the same. If you replace nicotine with games, it's the same playbook at this point. And back in the day, big tobacco was arguing that nicotine was not addictive, while at the exact same time pouring their research and development funds into creating products with the most amount of nicotine. And games are kind of doing the same thing now. Like, they're designed for engagement, they're designed to maximize time and maximize spending. And there's kids like 5, 6, 7 years old playing these games for hours and hours and hours, and it's not really appropriate. And I think the industry really should be doing more, and they should be ashamed of themselves at this current time. But I hope that changes.
Yeah, I think we could say that about every big industry. We, Giuseppe and I at the top of the show are talking about our sadness around how our government is dealing with healthcare for sick individuals, no matter what the addiction is. And I just know there's part of me that's just like I'm done expecting these guys to do the right thing. And these conversations sort of seem them like the only solution, like how do we deal with it in our homes with the people affected by it without expecting anything from our healthcare system. And like you say, it's important. I mean, I've lived through the false advertisements and this is nutritious sort of selling points. So I think we're in it, and it's ours. It's within our household to fight and try to find a solution. And I think that's why your own personal story is so important. So I'm wondering, in hindsight, if you've had the conversation with your folks, like, did they know you were being bullied? You know, was it, to see you quit hockey? Were they sort of just distracted, from work and living their own life? Was that discussed, or was it just sort of like, this is just a phase kind of thing? Like, it's just natural, some ignorance involved in really not knowing. Because the most, the parents that I hear, there's a lot like, I don't get it sort of mindset. Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand, and I think so much is about trying to find some understanding and some compassion. And you have a guide for parents on gamequitters.com as well, which I think is should be checked out from the parents. But yeah, back to your, like, what did your parents know or didn't know at the time?
Well, my parents, God bless them, they had a really tough time, and it happened for a couple of reasons. Number one, they had no idea that this could even be a problem, right? We're talking like this is like 15, 16, 17 years ago. Like this wasn't even close to the radar of anybody. And so for them to find information was impossible. And for them, they just kind of found like their son continuing to withdraw, continuing to get more hostile, and continuing to just want to be left alone. And for them, I think I wasn't an easy case. Like they could remove games, but I was coming back with vengeance. And like I wasn't, you could ground me from the computer, but then I was going to ground everybody from the computer because now I just put a password on the computer and now no one got to use it, right? And like they grounded me one time and I hit all the power cords for all the TVs and all the computers from everybody, right? Like, or I ran away from home and I was 14 years old. So I very much used the leverage of they were terrified to lose me as a kid.
Got it.
Against them. And it was like, it's not something I'm proud of. I don't even know how I thought of it, but I did. And so they really struggled. Parents today have so much more access to information that it's very important. If you don't understand it, if you don't really get it, that's okay. You're not alone, but start learning. Start really trying to investigate, like, what is it about games that's so compelling? Why do people play games? Why does your son or daughter play games? What do they like about it? What kind of games do they play? Like, are they playing with their friends or are they playing kind of by themselves? What sort of games are they playing? That can give you a lot of information as to what they're motivated by. And that can then maybe start some more conversations. Whereas if you attack it, you're going to get someone who's defensive and you're not going to learn very much. And so being curious, I think, is very important. Also working with other parents, like, especially now, it can be difficult to be a kid who's not playing games because you'll have no friends. And so working with other parents to have kids doing other activities together is really, really crucial. I think back in the day, even today, these parents are the first generation of parents to really deal with these problems. And so, one tip I think is a lot of kids, if they're under like 14, 15, 16 years old, they need a lot less access to games than you think. And I just had a text message from a dear friend. She has a son, he's 4, and she's like, I hear there's really good education games. I hear it's really good for their brain. Like how much should they be playing? Like, what do you think? And it's like, this is a very mindful, conscious parent. I'm like, this kid does not need to play games. He's 4. He will play with anything, literally anything. But if you give him games, he'll be very engaged in it. And it's just important to remember that, like, of course, games are going to be marketed as the next great thing for education because it gets every parent to buy devices and buy games for their kids. So
you've got lots of smart people that have survived on the planet that never touched a tablet. So I think we can get to the next 100 years. Darren has got 2 young kids. I'm Uncle G to 3-year-olds. And there's that fear. It's like, am I not a good parent if I don't buy these digital games to help my kid be smarter? And I remember last year at Christmas, and this is when they were all 2, like, oh, I need to buy like baby tablets. And, I never did. And thank God I did it. Now it's like not, especially with this show, like it's just not a high priority. You said something a couple minutes ago that I want to repeat because it really has never been said on this show before. And you said, oh, my goodness, how did it go? You said that I took leverage on making my parents think they were going to lose me if they didn't enable my addiction. I mean,
Yeah.
that's, you kind of said it like that. And I mean, you can use that with any drug, and it's the truth about
So
addiction.
typical.
It's
Yeah.
it's what I did. It's what, putting words in Darren's mouth. Darren, did you do it?
You.
Yeah. And now you did it, with video games, and I did it with, other stuff, and you know, like, it's the truth about addiction, and I think it's one of those things that we're never, as North America, never going to get out of this addiction crisis as we continue to say it's not your fault, it's, mental health and trauma and everything, it's not you. I mean, the reality is like, there's a lot of decisions I made that made my life unmanageable, and almost destroyed it, and for many of us, dying. We're not even like considering overdoses as something, as everybody knows there's fentanyl on the streets and it's everything. So I'm really happy that you said that, because I think more of us need to make that public. It's because then it helps parents. I've talked to so many moms, and you have too. It's like they think it's their fault, and it's like, it ain't your fault. Like, it doesn't. Like, there's kids that have played hockey that do heroin, and there's kids that didn't play hockey that do heroin. So it ain't because they weren't on a sports team. Like, that has nothing to do with it. But we think that, and so I'm grateful that you said that. We've got a few minutes left. Want to talk about Game Quitters? So gamequitters.com. You're the founder of it. It's got guides, apparently 200 videos, so that's pretty sweet.
So many videos.
Okay, you had to do something with your free time, and
Yeah.
then quick clips. Like, if I'm a parent or I'm an individual using video games, what am I going to find at Game Quitters, and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, number one, you'll find resources. So you'll find information, you'll find high quality information on like what's going on and what can you do about it, whether you're a gamer or you're a parent. And we have the structured guides for people who are looking for that sort of experience. But we also 99% of the website is free, and we also have a list of professionals. So if you're looking for someone, we have people in Vancouver, we have people across the world. If you're looking for people who specialize in this issue, and you're looking for someone to work with, there are those people as well. And then also with a new company called Intenta, this year we launched to really actually help train professionals on working with gaming disorder. Unfortunately, there's very few people who actually work with this issue around the world. And when I get a call from a family looking for help and they're in an area that I don't have someone, it really sucks. Like, it's one of the worst experiences for me personally. And so we committed to really trying to train more professionals around the world on just understanding gaming disorder, working with gaming clients. What are prevention strategies? What are intervention strategies? And what is this issue? And really getting a better grasp on it. And so we have that training now. It's completely virtual. It's 15 hours worth of training. I'm very proud of it. And that's available at Intenta or on Game Quitters. I think if you click the professionals tab, you'll find it too. So yeah, really just trying to kind of provide every resource I can to help people wherever they are understand more about this issue and get the help they need, because I really believe, like, let recovery set you free. It could save my life and it could save your life too. And it could save your family's life. So yeah, take it seriously, but it can make a difference.
Right on. That Camadare with gamequitters.com. Yeah, I checked it out. It's got a lot of resources, TED Talks that you've done. So I mean, good for you, because yeah, I don't suspect there's going to be government funded treatment centers being built for anything in the next little while. And if it wasn't for guys like you that got out of it and shared their story and put a lot of effort into trying to find some like genuine support. Like, when I listen to you and you talk about an email from a mother, like that the genuine support, the genuine concern to want to help somebody, those are the people that are going to make a difference for those struggling. So thanks for coming on the show, Cam. All the best out there in Thailand.
I know, one of my favorite places in the world. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm grateful to be here. It's you know, it's hard to not be home and to not get to see my family and these sorts of things. But on the other hand, you know, Thailand at the moment, you know, it's fairly normal life here, and so we're really blessed for that. And I look forward to the day I can get back on the road and see people and give people hugs and just like be in person again, whether it's speaking or otherwise. It's something I hope comes around sooner than later.
Definitely a shared sentiment.
Yes, with many people, many people. Thanks for listening, everybody. Talk Recovery Radio, SoundCloud, YouTube, where else? SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, the other one, and listen to us, Vancouver Co-op Radio. Thanks for making donations to the fundraising campaign that they just had. $40,000 raised. That was awesome. You can still donate if you got loose change. VancouverCoOpRadio.org, and you can replay all of our shows at TalkRecoveryVancouver.com or TalkRecoveryRadio.com. I always get it mixed up. I need it written down somewhere. Cam, thanks for being on our show.
Thanks so
Darren,
much.
always good to see you.
Thanks, Cam. Good to see you.
You got issues with video games, you can actually chat with Cam because there's a little picture of him at the bottom of the website that says chat. Is that really you, Cam? Do they get to chat with you?
Yeah, that comes to me. Yeah, that comes to me. I think in parentheses I have like, it's Cam, not a bot, because people used to always be like, it's not you, and I'm like, it's me, and they're like, send me like confirm it's you. I'm like, it's me. What do you like? Just I'm like actually trying to help you. Like, just like send me your question, you know?
That's pretty cool that it's you though. Hey, that's really cool. Because there's so many treatment industries out there where literally it's bots. So that's super cool that it's you. I can just imagine some of the chats you get. So an applause to you for even just being there to help people. Because I mean, that's how this works, is people helping people. And your doctor might understand addiction, but your fellow common a person understands it more. So thanks for being on Talk Recovery Radio, Darren. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, bye, everybody.